Jen to begin. Jen, take it away.
Thank you, Ben, for that introduction. As Ben stated, today's webinar, we're going to be focusing on inventory best practices. Before I jump into the informational part and the demonstration part, I just wanted to give a brief definition. As Ben stated, we're going to be going into both periodic and perpetual inventory. Those are the two types of inventory that SMS supports. If you're unfamiliar, periodic inventory means you're simply doing a periodic inventory count, whatever you define as the period, whether it be weekly, monthly, quarterly, yearly, you're just entering in an inventory count at that time. Perpetual inventory means that you are constantly tracking your inventory. As items are selling, it's subtracting from your inventory. As items are being received in the back door, they are constantly being added to the inventory. So it's a consistent running count of your inventory. There is, of course, the option of no inventory. That's the third option. If you are looking to start doing inventory and you're deciding between the two of them, there is also the option within perpetual inventory. If you do not want to be tracking inventory on all of your items, we can work with you to initialize certain items or certain sub-departments that you may want to track inventory on, such as alcohol items or cigarette items. You may want to just track inventory on those, or maybe you want to track inventory on all the items in your store and not produce. We can help you do that. So to start with, I'm going to go into SMS Pro. The first part of really doing inventory is cost record. In order to do inventory effectively, you have to have a cost record. SMS Lock programs the inventory count to be kept on the cost record. The reason behind this is if you are tracking inventory, the assumption is that you are going to be getting the inventory from an outside vendor. So they tied it to that vendor record to keep the inventory count. If you're looking at just starting to do inventory, you want to start initializing, or like I had said previously, where you can just initialize certain items, you can do that right here from the cost record. Just simply by double clicking on the IND, or if it says no IND, that means that you haven't initialized yet. You can initialize inventory on each individual item to start tracking perpetual inventory. It'll come up, it'll say you're initializing inventory. This will reset the current inventory. Are you sure? And you can click yes or no. If you do have a count on here, whether it be an incorrect count, somebody had accidentally initialized it, it will reset it to 0. That can be a little tedious. So there is the option of initializing a whole group of items as well from here. So up here, you can come in and you can set your filter to look for a couple items as I have up here, or you can come up and pull in an entire sub-department category family code, pull that into the browser. So I'll just pull in all of my subs into the browser. And then you can use the maintenance utility tool, which is located under analysis utilities. And you can initialize perpetual inventory on all of the items in the browser. Just like if you do it on the individual cost records, you would click on this. It's going to make sure you understand you're initializing the inventory, and it will adjust all your inventory that has a count right now to 0. You would just hit OK from here. And that's how you can do an entire sub-department if you're just looking to do 1 or 2 sub-departments. So going from that, once we've initialized inventory, now there's some best practices involved in maintaining that inventory. I'm going to switch over to the SMS. I'm going to be showing you this in both the SMS back office and on the handheld interface, simply because a lot of inventory is done on the handheld, so I want to show both ways of doing this. Whether it be on the back office over here, you're going to sign in and it's going to be under the buying tab. Right directly underneath the buying, there is inventory. As a little side note, if you are doing perpetual inventory, receiving is a large portion of this. If you are going to be tracking your inventory accurately, you have to not only track what leaves the system, but you also have to track what's coming into the system. So we did cover receiving best practices in another webinar. You can go reference that if you'd like to go through that. But for today, I'm going to focus on the actual inventory module and how this can help you maintain accurate counts in your inventory. So on the back office, I'm going to go into the extended module. You're doing this on the handheld. I'm logged into the handheld. It's actually right here under the main menu. There's an inventory option. I'm just going to go into the inventory option, and I'm going to go back and forth between the two because it's very much the same idea, just a little bit of a different interface. When you go into the back office, you're going to go into items and you're going to have the main documents that can help you track your inventory and make sure that your inventory is accurate. They're the inventory count, multiple count, and adjustment. This is meant to be a best practice. The other ones down here are meant if you're getting more in-depth into inventory, we could go over that individually if you're looking for those. But for this is the 3 main documents that you'll be using for inventory for best practice. If you're doing this on the handheld and you go into open a new document, you're going to notice that there is no inventory count. There is a multiple count, but no inventory count. And I'm going to explain why. Inventory count and multiple count are really the same idea behind them. This is a way for you to count your inventory in the system. So you could have somebody where you want to just recount the items in a certain aisle, in a certain sub-department, we think the count's off, or we're just doing a periodic count on that to make sure that our numbers are accurate. When you do a count, you're going to overwrite the numbers in the system. So when I go in and do an inventory count, multiple count, or inventory count, whatever I input as the number, it's going to overwrite the number that's in the system. What happens is with an inventory count that we only have in the back office, you count the item once. So if you're walking around and you're only doing a small section or somebody's bringing items to the back office for you to count, you're just going to count the number of items in front of you. If you're doing a multiple count, if you happen to have that item in 2 different places in your store, so you have them in the aisle, you have them on the end cap, you may have to count that item more than once inside the same document. Thus, you need a multiple count. That's why there's 2 different options. So the multiple count, if you count the same item twice within the same document, it will add to the count. You do an inventory count, it will just take the first count and then overwrite it with the next count and the next count. So I could count 10, then I find the item in a different spot, I count 5 more, it'll take the 5 as the last number. So that's why the multiple count is the only one available on the handheld, because it assumes you're moving around. Since they go through the same thing, I'm going to go through and show you a multiple count on both. So if you go into multiple count, you click the button, it's going to say you're in multiple count mode. Then you're just going to go through and you start scanning your items, or you can manually input them in the back. You can also just find them in the list. So for my energy drink, I'm going to go through. My count right now is 125. That's what I have on hand. But when I go out there and count them, I'm doing 100. Since this is a count document, it's going to take the 100. And that's going to be my new count. It's not an adjustment. We're going to get into that. This is taking the new count and overwriting it to the new, overwriting the old count with the new one. So my variance is 25 because I had 125 before. The same thing applies if I'm doing this on the handheld. So I would come in and do the same thing. Go into my multiple count. It's going to say, what's the date? I can verify that it's today's date, hit enter, and I can start scanning my items. So I'm just going to hand key in an item. Oh, that is a kit. So I'm going to go ahead and use my energy drink again. And as you can see, I did a count of 100. So that's the new count. So I'm going to go ahead and say that the new count is 150. Because this is a multiple count, I'm in the same document as this, it's actually going to add to that count and do 250. That's what the benefit is of a multi-count. Again, you do have the option to do an inventory count on the back office, which would just overwrite it and set that value. But multi-count tends to be what we consider a best practice, because thinking about your store, you generally have items in more than one spot. You have it on the aisle, you might have it on a display, you might have it up by the front end so that people can grab it right before they check out. And you could very easily have items in the back waiting to be brought out. So generally speaking, multi-count, that makes sure that you're catching all those items instead of accidentally counting one on the shelf, then one here, one there. When you're done with your count document, in both cases, you're going to go, you can click on lines in the back office and see all the items that have been entered. You can print the report. So you can print a report and see the items as they've been entered. So you can click on your items and see what the count was. This is my new count, the variance, what the value of the items is that we did not count, that we lost. You can suspend the document, which will leave the document in an open suspended state, or you can close and submit the document. When I close and submit the document, that means it's done, the count has been official, and the back office will be, the back end, I'm sorry, will be updated with the new count. If you were on the receiving, you may remember that we said as a best practice, if you are creating a document, the best practice is to close the document on the same day that you're creating it. The reason why, if I suspend this document, this will show as an open document right here. And somebody else, and if I forget to come and close this document at the end of the day, somebody else could come along next week and say, hey, I needed to do a count. Oh, there's already an open document here. They can also open this document on the handheld unintentionally. Open the document and they like come in here and they can start adding new items. So if they do this on, say, the 31st, July 31st, they come in here and they have a couple other items they have to enter a count in. You can do that. The system will put those counts in, but the system will take the date that the document was open and that is when the count will be affected. So if I'm on the 31st and I go out and I count, we'll just say my third recipe, my pies, I went out and I said, oh, I only had 50. And I'm looking at it as it's the 31st. I think that there's 50 on the 31st. Because the document was open on the 27th, it's going to go back to the 27th, and that's going to be the count on the 27th and recalculate anything that has been received or sold since then. So best practice is to try to keep your inventory documents closed on the same day that you open them, because that's the day that you actually counted them. And that way you don't have to worry about a week later somebody's adding more items and closing the document. Same applies if you're looking at this on the handheld. You can go under INV. You have the option to suspend the document right here. And then you can go under more and you can close the document right here as well. Same exact thing applies. You're putting the date in here. If you suspend it, it will stay open. People can add things to it. If you close it, then all your inventory counts will be updated in the back. If you do suspend it on the handheld or you do suspend it in the back office, it will appear for the other side to go ahead and pick it up. So when I suspend the document here, it will show back here as an open document. There's my open document. So I have two listed for today because I had the one here and the one on the handheld. The other type of document, just going to suspend that for right now. The other type of document that's key in maintaining good inventory is the adjustment document. And again, this is available on both the handheld and on the back office. What the adjustment does, instead of overwriting the count, it's going to adjust the amount. So this is used a lot when people maybe drop something in an aisle, broke spaghetti sauce, or they return something up at the front end, they return something, they didn't want it and you can't resell it, or something went out of date. You're going to want to do an adjustment because you cannot sell those items anymore, but you want to make sure that the system is accounting for those inventory no longer being in your system. You don't have to do an inventory count every time, you can just do an adjustment. So when you come in and do an adjustment, you go in, here's my second recipe, and I have an old count of 18, and two of those items just went out of date. So I can do an adjustment of 2, and now it's doing, instead of overwriting that number 18 with 2, it's adjusting that number 18 by 2 to 16. By default, an adjustment is listed as waste, so it's a negative. You can make it a positive. Maybe there is an adjustment where you are opening up a pack of soda to open up a 12-pack of soda to take those 12 cans and put them on the shelf. You can come down here, the reason code, double click in this field, and you can make it a plus, a split. You're splitting a pack. And then the next one that is done, so I'll leave that here. My first recipe, I'm taking 5, and since I put it to an adjustment plus, it's adding the 5. So it went from 30 to 35. This is also able to do on the handheld. So you would just open the document. Sorry, we're going to actually go ahead and create a new document because I didn't suspend this one, and do an adjustment instead of a count. Again, you would input the date, then scan your items or item, and you would just do your adjustment right here. By default, it's also set to a negative, but it's not as clear cut that it's a negative on the handheld. It just shows the reason code. If the person is unsure, there is the question mark box right here that they can go in and they can see the 8610 adjustment negative wasted, or they can change it to a positive for a split. The rest of this stays the same. So by default, it's negative. So if they dropped 5 energy drinks, they can do an adjustment of 5, taking that count, the old count, from 125 to 120. Still at 125 because I didn't close those 2 count documents. Same thing applies with this document. Once everything is done, on the back office, you can go into lines, you can print your report, so you can print that out beforehand. In case you want to have a list of everything that was adjusted, you can suspend and close and submit the document. You suspend it, it's an open document that people can go back and add. Closing and submitting is that means the inventory will be adjusted, and that's the new count. Same applies with the date on this as well. Best practice is to close these documents the same day. You can create an adjustment document at the beginning of the day to do all your adjustments, and then at the end of the day, close it. That's perfectly fine. But the more further away you get from the date that you created the document, is the more issues that can be caused, because you could be counting or adjusting an item 10 days down the road and then go back and add an adjustment to this that will be affected 10 days ago. And that will throw off your counts. And of course, the same thing applies on the handheld. You can go into INV and you can suspend and you can close the document right here as well. I'm going to go ahead and close it this time. There is some specialty items and different ways to do some of the things that I did just show you. In particular, I'm going to switch back to our SMS Pro, but in particular, so I just brought up the idea of splitting up a soda can, splitting up a 12-pack and selling those individual soda cans. We can set up the system to do that automatically, which will help you track inventory. This is especially noted in cigarettes. If you're selling cigarettes in your store, you can sell cigarettes by the carton and you can sell cigarettes by the pack. You don't always want to stop and have the cashier that has to open up the carton because they ran out of the pack say, oh, we have to go do an adjustment on this really quick. So there is ways to do that so the system can actually do that automatically. So I actually have that as an example in my lab. So I'm going to go ahead and pull up both my pack and my cigarette. And we're going to go ahead and switch that to OR. So here is my pack of cigarettes, and here's my carton of cigarettes. So I don't want to have that cashier every time they open a carton have to run back and do an adjustment and say, hey, I have to open this carton. We have to add 8 packs of cigarettes and take away 1 carton of cigarettes from the inventory. The way that we do this is on the cost record, as that most everything with inventory is tied to our cost record, you can create what's called a split code. So on the carton, so this is my carton, it's $62. Inside that carton, we can set up a split code. So if I'm looking at the split code, that 8,000 is my cigarette pack code, and there's 8 of them inside my carton. So in every carton that I sell, it's going to take away 8 packs of this code, 8 packs of cigarettes. So all the inventory is going to be tracked on my smaller item, on the pack item. If I sell a carton, it's going to say, I'm selling this item. Oh, there's a split code. I'm going to split it down to this 8,000 code and take away 8. And it will affect my inventory and take away 8 from my inventory. If I receive this item as a carton, as the barcode for the carton, it will see the split code and say, oh, there's a split code. I don't track inventory on this. I track inventory on the smaller pack, and I add 8 to the inventory when I receive it in. It's always on the smaller segment, so that way you don't have partials. If you were trying to do it the reverse way, you were trying to have it every time you sold cigarettes, you were taking away like 1/4 of a carton or half of a carton, you'll always have partials. So this way you always have just a whole number count. I'm using cigarettes and cartons as an example, but you can use this with any other item that you may be splitting up on the floor that needs to be tracked for inventory purposes. There is nothing done on the smaller items. You just have to initialize inventory on the smaller items. In order to track inventory, you don't need any information. The split code is all done on the carton item. The other specialty item that you may want to use when you're doing inventory is what we call a kit or a basket. So if you're putting together a kit to be sold on the sales floor, maybe it's a holiday of some kind and you want to give a gift basket and you want to have multiple items inside that gift basket, you can do what's called a kit. So you would create a new barcode. Underneath item, drop down, there's the kit and multiple. And inside this table right here, you're going to list the inventory that's actually in this basket. So this basket, my UPC code 10, is $11. Was on sale for $1 at one point. That did not clear off, but it is $11. And inside that basket, I have these 3 items. I have 5 of my item code 61, 2 of my item code 101, and 2 of my item code 998. So when I sell this item, it's going to go take the inventory from these. So it's going to take away 5 of this code, 2 of this code, 2 of this code automatically without me having to go do an adjustment or count on anything. There is no inventory tracking on this item. If you try to do an inventory count or adjustment on a basket or kit item, the system will actually give you an error message. You can't do that because you should never track inventory on the basket. Everything is tracked on this table so that these are taken away from the inventory. The one thing I always make sure I tell customers when they're doing this, make sure if you are actually putting these in a container, like I have a gift basket, make sure you list the gift basket as well, the basket item itself in the kit, because there's no tracking on this. So it's not actually the basket barcode. This is the barcode of the bundle of the kit. You want to list every single thing that's leaving your inventory, including the basket or container that you have everything in. The last thing I did want to go over for inventory best practices is reporting. So always a key part of doing inventory is making sure that you're tracking all of this in your report. For good inventory management, there's 3 key reports that you should be running. And inside the reporting module, these are always broken down. So if you go underneath sub-department, you'll have an inventory portion. If you go under vendors, you have an inventory portion, categories, etc. Inside each one of these, you're going to have an inventory value report, an inventory movement report, and a cost of goods report. One of each of these should be used for tracking your inventory: an inventory value report, a movement report, and one of these cost of goods reports, whichever one suits your needs. The value report is going to give you the amount of items that you have and the value of them. So it's going to give you the inventory count, case count. It's going to give you the inventory unit count. So it'll give you both varieties, how many cases you have, and how that translates into how many units you have, what the value of that is at cost, at average cost and database cost, what the value is at retail. So that way you know at any given time how much inventory you have and what the value of that inventory is that you have in your store. The movement report is going to show you how the items have moved in your system. With this one, you're going to pick a time period and you're going to see what the beginning inventory is, any positive adjustments or purchases, something that added inventory to your system over that time period, and any negative adjustments or sales, because the sales is a negative, it takes inventory out. And then what your ending inventory is. As long as everything is running well, everything has been accounted for, you should have your beginning inventory minus the negative, plus the adjustments and the purchases, minus the negative adjustments in sales, and that should give you your ending inventory and everything should balance out. But this way you can also get a nice, easy way to see how this has moved throughout your system. The nice thing about this report, I'll actually run this report, is you can come in here, you can choose your time period, you can choose your sub-department range, you can choose how you would like to have it look at unit, cases, or dollars. There's also an expansion. I'm going to leave this not expanded, and I'll show you how that works. So you launch this, and it gives you your totals by, since I did sub-department, by sub-department, so you can see where my starting inventory was at the beginning of the week, where it is as of right now, because the end of the week, I'm not there yet. If I want to get into details, you can click here for details and get the items as well. So that's what the expand all does. So you can just look at the numbers for the overall sub-department. If you're running this by department, by vendor, whatever you chose to run this by, you can view it that way, but then you can also get into those details by items if you want to. So it gives you that flexibility. The last report that you should do is any cost of good reports. This will be, there's a variety of different reports you can run: item, cost of goods by sub-department. Obviously, if you're looking at vendor category, you would have those options. But this will give you what your inventory is, the quantity that you've sold, the amount in dollars that you've sold, what you sold at cost, what your profit and margins are. One of the best things about keeping track of your inventory is being able to drill down into that information and get what your actual profit is and what your margin is and what that cost of goods was at the moment that you sold the items. You know what you're actually making on those items. All of these will work. I just happened to pick this one, but all of these will work depending on which ones you would, what information and which report works best for your store. But you should always be checking a cost of good ones when you're doing inventory management. So with that, Ben, was there any questions?
Awesome, Jen. Great job. Thank you for covering the inventory options within SMS. A couple of questions that did come through. If you are doing a split code on an item, do you also need to negatively adjust the item that you're splitting?
No, you do not. If you're doing the split code, the system will automatically do that for you. So when you sell the carton or you sell the carton of cigarettes, I always go back to cigarettes. You'll sell that carton, the system will automatically adjust that. If you were just starting to do split codes, you should set that item to 0, the carton, the bigger item to 0 to start, put the split code in, and then the system will start automatically tracking everything under the split code instead of the bigger item.
Perfect. Okay. Hopefully that answers your question. If not, please feel free to ask another one here. Next question was, can those reports be automatically run, after each period, or set up a weekly report if they're doing perpetual inventory?
They can be set to automatically run to print or to send to email. We can assist with setting up that.
Okay. And what are the advantages of having host for inventory?
So for host for inventory, the host does not actually track inventory. The stores track the inventory. The stores will be doing the inventory counts and the receiving and the selling, because that's where the items actually are located. However, you can do some tracking of the inventory at the host. The host has the ability to look down into the stores and see all the inventory that's being done, and they can see the amount of inventory that is at each store. I don't have the setup on my host because I have to have inventory in stores, but I have this screenshot so you can see this is a host environment, and you can see right here, you can have this pulled up by your item maintenance, and you can be tracking your inventory by stores and actually see what you have on hand, your inventory and your value and cost of what each store has on hand. So you can't exactly do inventory at the host, but you can see what the stores are doing for inventory and track it that way. And having a host actually assist you in being able to move inventory from one store to the next. If you ever want to move inventory from one of the stores to another store, the host is needed to do that. It will be able to send the inventory back and forth.
Awesome. And then I think they're just looking for confirmation that you can run both types of inventory, just by item or by department, sub-department, by vendor, right? You can manage both perpetual and periodic within SMS.
Correct. Yes, you can choose to have perpetual inventory on some items and periodic inventory on other items. Grouped however works best for you. Same with
Awesome.
the reporting. I know I focused on the sub-departments, but do you have the same reporting under these as well? Vendor, inventory, and all those.
Awesome. And STCR can definitely help out any of our customers or SMS users that are interested in starting perpetual, starting off maybe just with one area and then growing that into more departments within the store. It looks like, Jen, that was all the questions that we had come through. Give an extra minute if anyone does have any final questions we can cover real quick. But if not, you want to thank everyone for your questions and for attending today's